Welcome to She Loves the Grid, where we discuss all things F1. Whether it's happening on the track, in the paddock, or beyond the grid, we'll talk about it all.
All right, here we are. We're back to She Loves Grid. It's going to be a little later recording. I am Claire.
I'm Dianne.
So thank you all for joining. It's going to be publishing late, so when you guys are getting it, so later on a Tuesday because there was a lot of travel, though not as much as we had hoped. So we'll just get off on that. So how was our week? Mine was great, other than the delay of I could not join Dianne in Barcelona because of visas and government stuff.
Yeah, that was it's so disheartening. I have a picture of your empty seats. Actually, I was trying to send that to you, but for some reason it won't let me send some photos. Yeah, so we were so excited to have, this whole week together. And we did have days in Barcelona, in Berlin, which
Berlin,
was
yeah.
awesome. We did a lot. We ate some great food and got to spend some time together. But it flew by so quickly that we didn't really get a lot of video like we thought we would. And yeah, there was a whole lot of stuff we didn't get to do. And then because of the visa situation, Claire wasn't able to come with us to Barcelona.
Yeah, so just a quick thing on that, guys. I moved here from the United States and I've made my application. And I'm privileged being an American that while my travel visa has expired, I get to stay here while my application is in process. However, I'm not allowed to travel within the Schengen zone until my actual application's approved. So I'm kind of in a state of limbo right now. So I'm privileged enough that I can stay legally and wait, but I have to wait. So
Yeah. So just
and
really bad timing.
yeah, just timing. And the situation in Ukraine has kind of caused a lot of the delays. We thought it was going to happen. My immigration attorneys, like it probably is going to work. We might be able to use this other rule, but you're taking a risk, and I like to follow the rules. They're just too risky. So
Yeah.
yeah. So here we are.
Here we
Anyway,
are.
that's
But since it worked out the way it did, it's kind of interesting because I think we'll have two very different views of the race because when you're at the race, I think there's nothing better than being at the race, but you also don't have a whole lot of information. We actually got sick on our way to, we got on the plane just fine in Berlin, but
because
by the
I'm
time,
fine.
no, you're fine. It wasn't that. We don't know what happened. But by the time we were at our hotel in Barcelona, I was just like, I can't wait an hour for check-in. Like, you need to give me the room now, please. And we slept and we didn't go to practice on Friday. We didn't make it. We slept the entire day on Friday, just trying to get better and rest so we wouldn't miss race day and qualifying. Also. So it'll be so interesting to hear your side. So unless you're there on like Friday morning, first thing, you are not getting the little listening devices so you can hear what the commentators are saying. And so your view is really only one section of the track. We could see the screens, but sometimes it's hard to watch. Like, I want to see the cars coming by and not focusing on the screen. I might as well just stay home and watch it if I'm going to watch the screen. So there's a lot of things that you miss out on. You don't hear what the radios, what they're saying, and there's a lot of questions. So I think it'll be good because you heard a lot more.
Yeah.
I was seeing stuff happening at the track, but
And so for
yeah,
perspective, our seats were between turns 13 and 14. We were
yeah.
and in the section right at the bottom of it, closest to turn 14. So a really good view of everything. But
Yeah, it was great because you could see the cars coming up. We saw some spins, and we'll talk about that. I think it was during qualifying. But also it's where they took out the chicane. And so it really was very high speed section. So it was, yeah, really good. I liked our seats.
I'm maybe next year, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to if I can get some. last minute tickets at one of the other races once I know my visas are approved. So
Yes.
right. So let's get into it. The
Yep.
practices. And just so you guys know, Diane's the one who takes all these copious notes through all the things that are happening, and I do not. And so let's see how we do. Because I after the fact, let's see what I could do. Okay, so first off, I thought it was really interesting because if people weren't aware, and they talked about this a lot during the race, is that this track used to be the test track.
Yes.
So a lot of the teams were doing testing. So there were aero rakes. It shows a picture of like Fernando's car had the aero rakes on it.
Oh,
They had Floviz were on a lot of the cars, and then they were using the test tires. There was a
yeah.
set of test compound out there. So there's a
Yep.
lot of testing going on, especially during FP1. There's a lot of testing happening during the practice, which I thought was really interesting. Extra data was happening. I mean, we do know a couple of the teams have made some changes to their cars, like Mercedes and
Yes.
whatnot. But it was just amazing to see. Here we are in this round, and we're doing more testing. It's like just the strategy and the engineering that continually happens throughout the season, and they're doing testing in the first part of the season still.
Which I think you make a really good point is so many teams had upgrades, and because we didn't have Imola, they didn't use those upgrades in Monaco. There was some, but you're not going to see, because it's the slowest track, you're not going to see, you're not going to get the data you want. You want to see what's happening. So I think with that, and then also the tires, the test tires, there's 2 compounds, I believe, and they're going to start going into effect starting with Silverstone. So I bet
Mm-hmm.
it was a combination of testing, gathering data about these new tires, because I don't think they ever said where they're at on the compound list. Is it is it closer to a C2? Is it closer to a C4? Not that I had heard anywhere. But also, like, let's gather as much data about our upgrades, about these 2 new compounds that might be put into use. And supposedly they're doing those now instead of next year like they planned, because the cars are so much faster this year.
Yeah.
So
They
again,
did say Silverstone.
gather
They
that
did say
data.
Silverstone. Yeah, and it's interesting to be doing that, like in the season, doing testing, and then it's just
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. I love that. That's cool, because we weren't there.
Yeah.
We didn't see it.
Now I want to point this out, and
Yeah.
because I was taking my notes, I got confirmation of this. I thought I heard it, that the commentators confirmed it. So I've told you about this, and I know it's not just because he's not my favorite driver and whatnot, but I swear Max complains every race, right, about the car. So during this one, he complained about the engine. And so when I was going back and researching to make notes for this, he
Yeah.
does complain about it being a bleeping terrible, the engine mode. And
Uh,
then the commentators acknowledge that he often complains about the car on Fridays.
that's funny.
So it's not just me.
Definitely not just you. But I also get like why that happens on Fridays, because that's, your first testing on the track, running the car, how's it working? And Max is such a driven driver. He's such he's so competitive that, yeah, he's like, he wants us locked in. Like, here's what I need you to change. This needs to be ready for practice later today or quali tomorrow. Like, yeah,
I
I
just can't
totally
imagine it being his team, though. Like, you just know every Friday, oh, what's he going to complain about this time? Just not a very healthy environment. Anyway,
Yeah.
there's a lot of chatter that day about the weather, and I was already starting to feel uneasy about Alonso. Like, I really wanted to do the tattoo, and I was saying this, and my partner, he's like, "Well, you could still get a tattoo," and I'm like, "It's not going to be the same one that we were designing out ideas for, like him
Yeah.
getting podium, getting P1."
Yes.
Anyway, but I was already starting to feel uneasy just the way he was not pushing it. I know they don't always push it in all the practices, but it's like,
Right.
show me some stuff, and he just wasn't. But anyway, they're already talking about a lot of chatter during FP1, and then the results of FP1 were Max, Checo, and Ocon, which I thought was kind of interesting.
I thought so too, because I did, when I woke up at like 4 o'clock that afternoon, I did see that Ocon was third, and I thought, wow, holy moly, Alpine really brought it, right? They really stepped it up, and Ocon moving from third on the podium in Monaco to already third. Now again, like we've said, practice is, you don't know what they're running, you don't know what they're looking at. But it was kind of exciting to wake up and see that for sure.
Yeah, I was just like, oh wow, look, it's just like we just had the results of Monaco show up in FP1. So, but
That's
then
awesome.
you get into FP2, and I didn't realize because you were asleep, but I thought you were at the race, so I wasn't messaging you because I knew you didn't have your like cellular going. But I was like, you were probably having just a cow over the fact that Ferrari was having so many problems. They were having a level wobbling while they were braking. They kept doing a lot of like slow mo and replays that their
Oh,
car was having. Yeah, they kept reporting this. The stuff they were talking about. Charles and Carlos both were talking about, especially Charles, and the replay were showing it that when they would brake, the car would wobble a bunch. Yeah, yeah, so
oh,
they were struggling a lot in that FP2 session. And they're talking about some issues with the car and braking.
oh my goodness. Did
Yeah,
not even know that. I'm glad I
yeah,
didn't know that going into Saturday. That would have freaked me out.
yeah. I mean, to me, it was a pretty clean session otherwise. And then Alonso finally was like pushing it. I was like, okay, maybe I'm getting that tattoo. I gotta start putting some stuff up. We could put the poll after he wins, and then get everybody to vote on it. So it was like an up and down day for me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and then Nico finishing in
Yes.
3 there. Like, what?
I know. I was like, it was like it was like kind of topsy turvy there. I was like, oh, is this going to be? And I got to thinking, I mean, again, this was like the first one in a while because we've had so many street races, and it's like, oh,
Yeah,
are we going to see like a race? This is. They keep talking. They kept saying over and over. Most of these drivers have seen this track and they know
yeah,
this track. I'm like, oh, are we going to really see, since we didn't see Imola, which is like classic F1, is this like
yeah,
secondary classic F1 because everybody knows it? I'm thinking we're not going to have all these people flying up the track, and we're not going to have accidents, and we're not going to have bumps, and we're not going to have all these different problems. And no, then
yeah.
FP3 happened. Yeah, I
Oh,
just did. I thought all that. Like, then FE3 happened. I've got a list. Actually,
I know you do.
Q1
And
was worse.
MP3,
Q1 was
like,
worse.
it did rain,
Yes.
right? And so it actually was, I mean, weather-wise, it kind of was nice. I did not mind the rain at all. We had our umbrellas and we were all set. And it definitely came over the mountains. The track is in such a beautiful location. I mean, all tracks seem to be out in the middle of nowhere. And this one is no different. But looking around, you see all this green and then these mountains kind of, out in the distance, and it's so beautiful. Just sitting where we were, I just kept looking like, God, this is this is gorgeous. And I will get posting on our social media. I have so much stuff that I wanted to post, but internet was
Yeah.
iffy a lot of times. And then again, we weren't feeling well, so it was like we'd get back and there were, we wanted to eat, and then it's
Yeah,
like,
you and I did not coordinate very well with the hiccup with us last. We were trying last minute, and again, just to like go back to me not going. We were down to literally midnight the night before with
yeah,
me trying to figure out a way to go, and
yeah.
so we did not do well of like going. Oh, well, since I'm going to stay, maybe I should take over social media while you're there and post stuff. And what's the timing? And we were just totally on all
Yeah,
of that,
went
and
right over us,
we did
right
not plan
over us.
well. We did not plan
But
well on that.
yeah, it was crazy. So with the rain, it it seemed like it was drying up, right? Like it seemed like it would be okay. Well, I guess that will be qualifying. We can talk about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So let's get through FP3
Okay.
first. So first
Yeah.
off, there wasn't a lot until the red flag, and poor
Yeah.
Logan. That's all I can say. It's poor Logan. Like that kid, and I think it's interesting that we heard the rumor that De Vries was kind of given an ultimatum as a rookie, but poor
Yeah.
Logan. I mean, he's like, how many times? I should have gone and looked up how many times has he not started and ended in the bottom two or three?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. So he got into the gravel and he gets out and he's apologizing. He's like, I don't think it's that bad. And then, the F1 TV commentators like, no, and I saw it come off the flatbed. It's looking pretty rough. Who knows if they're going to be able to get him out in time for quali?
Oh,
Like,
wow.
yeah, they were worried. That guy was worried. I forget his name, but he was pretty worried about um because of the floor looked bad, and then of course the suspension, and because he hit it pretty hard, and then going into the gravel and everything, that it was thought it was going to be a lot of work. Of course, there was some rain on the track. Stroll went into the gravel. Checo was looking pretty good. Hamilton was not out much, but then he just like the last minute got out there, got P3.
Yeah,
So you
which we
got
thought was interesting because we could see obviously just one Mercedes on the track, and then they would show video of Lewis out of his car. And I'm
yeah
like, what is he doing? Like, he doesn't want to take the chance. I mean, because if I remember correctly, didn't they all wait a little bit?
yeah. It
Yeah,
was it was a little nerve wracking, and I think it was a little nerve wracking. I was just like, I mean, it was just practice,
yeah.
but yeah, I
Still,
and
like,
that it bothers me. It bothers me so much. It
well,
bothers
and then
me.
I remember saying because I think finally the Ferraris came out, and I was like, I am thinking like it might still rain during qualifying. Like, wouldn't you want to kind of be out on the track? And if it's a little bit wet or whatever, I know you only have so many tires, and so you might want to be hanging on
They
to
said
those.
they
We
had
don't
two
obviously
sets
want
of
to
intermediate.
start before quali.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and they even said that they were going out on old tires during practice too.
Mm,
So, like,
interesting.
yeah, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. All right. Well,
Qualifying.
let's see. And I started out in our notes in big red letters. So unexpected. It was just, I just kept going, what, what? Like,
It was crazy. Yes, I did jot down a couple things while I was sitting there in between sessions. So right at the start of Q1, it was kind of spitting, like
yeah,
just
that's what they said.
there.
Spitting.
Yeah.
They said light rain or spitting. Yeah.
But as you saw, because I think it happened, pretty quickly in Q1, there was one section of the track where it kind of comes up around one corner,
11.
right where we were sitting, and you saw with the first couple cars, it looked fairly dry. And then as they went through, you just saw the spray of water. And I'm like, there is like water on the track that you're not noticing at all. And then you go through it and the spray of water that would come out. And that's where we had a few people, doing the little sliding off.
It's probably
Like,
turn 11 because they said turn 11. That's where Sonoda spun out. And then
yep,
later DeVries had an issue.
yep.
Yeah, the turn 11 was not good. And I think that's where
It was scary.
Botas, I forget where he spun out, but that's where we got the red flag is for Botas.
Oh, yeah. No, we didn't. Was it there? I don't know. It seemed like several cars came through there and it was really scary. The other thing I had written down was that Gasley was getting in everyone's way. And so
Yes.
that was the other thing is as they passed the area where that used to be the chicane and now it was a very high speed, Gasley is just lollygagging and here comes Carlos. And twice also, I don't know which Mercedes, but the Mercedes did the exact same thing. I think it was Lewis coming up on George, and George kind of had gotten in the way. And we all thought like we were going to see a crash. Like that is how fast they were going and how they were able to avert like from hitting the car in front of them. When we heard that night about Gasley's grid penalties, it made sense. I'm like, this dude is in everybody's
Yeah.
way and dangerous, like so
Yeah.
dangerous. I literally thought I was going to witness Carlos getting in a crash right in front of us. It was really scary.
It's got to be interesting being there live too to see it because it's a different perspective than what we see on TV, right?
Yeah.
It's like
It's
it's different.
completely different because I don't know if they're like and our view was from behind, so we could actually see, as they're going and the lifting off of the
Oh,
throttle, like it was terrifying. And as fast as you think they go on TV, in person, it seems like it's on extra fast mode, you know?
Well, we were looking at the speeds, and at that track, there were some areas that they were hitting like 187, 190 miles an hour. It was fast. That
Yeah.
like there were some fast spots, over 300 kilometers an hour. It was
Is
fast.
it's really fast. And
Definitely
I
a
think
fast track.
when you're seeing it, sometimes you're kind of like, okay, here they come. But holy moly, especially on that fast, they were smart to take the chicane out. I can't imagine, like, that would be kind of a boring section if they kept it in. But that being now a high speed corner, it was intense. It was
Well, and you
really
were at the
good.
corner then at
Yeah.
14 where Alonso went off into the gravel, and that's when he started having problems because later in that same Q1, the commentators marked out that they had taped up his floor. So he had
Oh,
damaged his floor. So remember I was messaging you about something wrong with his floor. So I went
yeah.
back to this note. So I was like, I knew I wasn't losing my mind and just like imagining things. But yeah, they talked about that. The commentators had called out there was floor damage for Alonso that they had taped it up,
Oh,
which was going to
well,
cause
we
some
could
aerodynamic
see.
issues. And he was struggling because he did not have a lot of oomph in the rest of qualifying.
Interesting. Yeah, because we could see on the screen, I think it might have been a little bit later, maybe it was for Q3, the mechanics underneath this car. And I'm like, holy
Yeah,
moly,
because he
he
in
did a
Q3
number.
come out until 3 minutes left in
Oh, yeah.
Q3. I was panicking. We're looking for Q3. Anyway,
Same. No, same. Because we're like, Fernando hasn't been out at all. Like, maybe
I
he's
was
just happy with 10th place.
I was
I don't
having a
know.
heart attack. It was, oh my gosh, having a heart attack. Well,
Ah,
so Q1 we had, so Yuki spins out on turn 11. Then there was a red flag from Bottas, so we were at a hold. And then turn 14, Alonso goes wide, hits the gravel, damages his car. Then turn 5, DeVries spins off, and Albon spins off also.
yeah.
Sargent doesn't make it out, and he does finally make it out after his repairs to get a lap time. So, but it didn't really matter because he
No,
still ended up in 20th place.
not so much.
We had yellow flags out again later because of I should again, but it came up because turn 11 DeVries has an issue in that same turn.
Yeah.
And then what you pointed out, Sainz was not happy because Gasley got in his way.
Oh,
And
that was terrible.
he pleaded on. He did plead on the radio for the stewards to take a look. They did.
Good.
And at 3 minutes is when, before Q1 was over, Charles, Checo, and Alonso went and got new tires.
Oh,
And then there was that crazy last lap of just people
yeah.
just shooting up to the top. And you ended up with Hamilton, Norris, and Russell in the top three.
I know. Isn't that crazy? I mean, Norris was like, "What?" And I kept saying, like, I guess those McLaren upgrades, boy,
Mercedes, and then Mercedes, I was like, oh, my second favorite team. I get my shirt
yes.
out. I finally have some F1 shirts now, so
Yeah, them as well. But then we had Bottas was out, K-Mag was out, Albon,
and
Leclerc
Charles.
being out.
I was
I
like, Diane's gonna be crushed. I could just hear the proverbial scream from Barcelona to Berlin. I could just
I
hear
could
it.
not believe it. I was like, "What is he doing? Like, he needs to get a fast lap in. What is he doing?" And I can't remember if there was just like he was running into issues or traffic or whatever. But so I
I swear they were still calling out his brakes in Q1 too.
uh
I swear they were still talking about his brakes. I didn't find it in
maybe
the recap, but
I
um,
couldn't believe it. When my boyfriend was like, Charles, because I kept asking, I could see the screen, but I couldn't read all the little letters. And so I kept repeatedly saying, he had binoculars. And I was like, who's in the bottom five? Or he would just tell me who's last. And I'm like, no, who's in the bottom five right now? And so he goes, oh, Charles in 19th. I was like, what?
what?
And like, and they color code everything. So I was like, that can't possibly be my Ferrari in that bottom drop zone right now. And sure enough, I could not believe it. Charles out in Q1.
When does that happen? How? Like I was like I said, I
Well,
could.
his car was crap.
Yeah,
Clearly,
yeah,
that
clearly.
car was terrible. And again, not knowing why it was terrible, I didn't know anything about the brakes. Ugh,
Yeah, he
terrible.
was not happy. I have to get some of the quotes. He was not happy. There were definitely some quotes on that. It was, yeah, he was
Yeah.
not a happy camper. All right,
Insane.
so Q2, the stewards were investigating the two Gasley incidents at that point. It's pretty smooth to start, but then it went to you know to pot at the end. 2 minutes left is when Checo went into the gravel at turn 5, and you're just like, oh no, oh no,
Yeah.
like what's going on? Russell and Perez can't improve their times, and I was shocked that Russell ended up so far down. And it's at the end of that Lewis and George make their contact, and they hit. Maybe that's what you were talking about the
So no, it
no,
was
is that
two
different?
separate occasions. So I didn't know about that until after,
Oh wow!
because
And
that
Lewis came back
happened.
and apologized. By the way,
Yeah,
he took the
that
blame.
happened after they had passed us. But I did, looking back at the notes I took from that day, it was in Q2 when Lewis and Russell. So what I had written down was at our turn, one cut the other off, and then
Hmm.
yeah. So I don't know who was who because they come through sometimes so quickly and I didn't jot it down, when it happened. But I was thinking that George cut off Lewis and
Okay.
then they had the bump. So definitely not a great Q2 for
Well, in the bump, Lewis apologized and said it was on him, which is
okay. Well,
yeah.
I like that
And
he will
that
take ownership.
Yeah, that was really awesome on that part. But so you had that one. I mean, I didn't have much else. I don't remember much else other than Checo. That was just like that was heartbreaking.
Ah, Checo.
Um,
It was so sad. But then to have, so after we lose Charles in Q1, we lose Perez and Russell in
I know.
Q2. And it's like, oh my God, this is like opening up so much possibilities.
Oh, and then poor Yuki. Oh,
Yuki, I, my little global
I was
treasure,
hoping that would give him a chance to pop in there, but he just
just barely missed it. I was happy that DeVries made it through to Q2 because I feel like overall, if this was his last opportunity to show progress, I feel like he's showing the progress, right? Like,
yeah.
granted, he didn't make it into Q3, neither did Joe. He was the other one that was out. But I thought that DeVries was showing, even though he's fun, but I don't think you could see that water was on the
Yeah.
track.
And he's not the only one. They're seasoned ones that were
Yeah,
spinning out there.
exactly.
So
Yeah. So, and then Q3, oh my goodness, like you said,
all I gotta say
Alonso.
about Q3 is Alonso. That's the thing that got me. It's like
Yeah.
he's not out, he's not out, he's not out. And I didn't put two and two together that they were working on his car. All I could focus on is like, why aren't you out? So
Yeah.
why aren't you out? You need to get out. You need to
Yeah.
get out. And they're like, 5 minutes left. Why aren't you out? 3 minutes left. Oh, here comes Alonso. I'm like, you've got to go out one time. It's gonna take a minute to go around. You've got one try. You've got
Yeah.
one try, and then everybody else is going to come behind you. And I'm like, oh, he got up, I think P4 or something. I'm like, oh, that's great, but here comes everybody else.
Yeah.
I knew it. I knew it. I'm like, at that point, I'm like, I'm not getting a tattoo.
Yeah. Yes. And I didn't really take very many notes from Q3, but Norris finishing third.
Yeah.
No, well,
Again, because he was second in Q2 and then third in Q3 because it was
yeah.
Max Lando Carlos and then this one was Max Carlos Lando. I
Yeah,
was like,
I could
wow.
not believe it. I was like, wow, McLaren, I guess whatever you've been doing is really working, especially at this track. So, holy crap, like finally Lando is going to get maybe a decent season. And we
Yeah.
can talk about what happens in the in the race in a minute. But I will tell you it was amazing to be there with Carlos getting second, in qualifying, like starting on the front row, knowing it's the home race. The last time I was in person, Carlos started on the front row. That was Austin last year. It was Max and then Carlos in second, and freaking George Russell took him out in turn 1. And I literally said to myself, well, Russell's way back in the grid, so don't have to worry about Russell taking him out. Our seats were very close to the Carlos Sainz stand. So huge stand for Carlos. It was all marked, Carlos Sainz. That crowd was a fun crowd over there. They love to do the wave. They were cheering. And I've
You know,
got some video I'll post because they sang a lot. Oh, Fernando Alonso. They did that a lot. But they were constantly doing chants and singing and cheers. And it was so fun to be at Carlos's home race, that close to their stands. He's on the front row of the grid for the race. It was just very, very exciting. Like,
I'm so buying the tickets for next year as soon as it go on sale. Like, I'm going again next year. I'm going again,
Yeah.
meaning I'm actually going. I'm going next year. I've got to go. But you know what? One of the things I thought was really cool about the actual race, and I don't like the whole like pomp and circumstance before and after. I could just do without. But one of
I
my
love it.
favorite parts was Fernando and Carlos arm in arm during the
Me
anthem.
too. I was kind of crying because, again, like the
They're
view.
both so short too, because like Fernando's only like 5'7", so Carlos
Yeah.
can't be much taller.
In my head, Carlos is like 6 feet tall.
But he's
Oh.
not. 'Cause Fernando's only 5'7".
I know.
Which is
I know.
only is the same height as my partner, dude. So that he's not big. So-
I know. But I think that was one of my favorite parts. I love pomp and circumstance in general. I love that kind of stuff. But again, where this track is, how green it was, the mountains, everything. And you hear the piano version of their national anthem.
That part I love. That part I
It
love.
was beautiful. Like, everybody was silent. It was so quiet. And then I see the video, on the screen of them, arms around each other, around their shoulders. It was amazing. I did take a little picture, I tried to zoom in on the screen, but it was gorgeous. Like,
I love the piano. That was one of my things. It was like, oh my gosh, I've got a grand piano. I should clarify. I like the pomp and circumstance when it's like that, when it's live. I loved the live band playing the outgoing, dun, 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 dun. I love when it's live like that. I don't like it when it's like too manufactured, because I think it's because I played live, orchestral music before. So so I love that they had the grand piano. My first thought was, how'd they get the grand piano out there? That's amazing. And she was on it, man. That was amazing.
It was gorgeous.
That was
beautiful. Tell you, prior to the race, because we got there somewhat early, and we decided, okay, when you come into the track, you can obviously go one of two ways. And the day before, we had gone one way. Saw some of the driver talks. I was really disappointed Friday because we didn't go out. We missed a lot of driver talks, but got to see on Saturday the Alpine and then Ferrari. And coming up after that was Red Bull. But there were so many people, and because I usually like to be at the front because we got there late. We were kind of in the throng of people. So I'm like, let's go. I think I'm gonna pass out. But anyways, on Sunday, we went a different direction. We went to the left and thought we'll walk around, which was definitely the longer way. But I like to see as much of the track as I can. Like, what do different parts of the track look like? And is there a better seat and a better view? And I think our seats were good, unless you're going to sit on the pits, across from the pits. But it was hot. And I never did look to see what the temperature was. It might have only been in the 70s, but the sun was hot. And I was getting a little worried that I don't know if I'll be able to make it. I think it might be a little too hot. But as the race was getting closer to start time, the wind started picking up. And once you got into your seat, it just felt so good. And then here came all the clouds. And we honestly thought, because the clouds coming over our heads towards the track, we're pretty dark. It was pretty dark. And we thought, oh my God, it's going to start raining just when, the race starts. Like, it's been sunny and hot and kind of nice. And as soon as this race starts, it's going to start raining. And it never did rain. We felt a few sprinkles here and there, but nothing at all. And it was just perfect temperature. It got so nice and cool the entire time, to the point where I ended up putting on my jacket because it was so chilly.
Oh, nice.
So Yeah, it actually, I think, worked out pretty well. It could have been maybe a different race if it had stayed that hot. You never know with the track.
Well, that's
But
cool. Well,
yeah.
let's get into the race itself. Like I
Yeah.
said, to me, I mean, there's no crashes, and you didn't have a lot of off the tracks and all of that. So for my notes, I just kind of summarized kind of everybody moved around up and down, you know, positioning by
Yeah.
team.
Do you know what?
I
When did
I
Kurt?
wasn't feeling
When
from the
did?
start that Alonso was going to win, so I kind of was. But
Yes.
I get my second favorite team. Mercedes
Yeah.
is great, so I'm happy with that. So
I had that
um,
feeling too. I was hoping Carlos, and on our predictions I put both Carlos and Fernando, even though I thought about putting Lewis just because it's like their home race. But here's the thing. I don't think I ever figured out why Charles started from the pit. What did he take? Do you know that he was starting from the pits?
I think he did an upgrade.
Yeah,
I'll
I
look it
figured
up.
that's what it was because he's starting from the pits, but like I never heard why. And no big deal if we don't know, but I was just curious if you knew.
I don't know. I'll look it up. But yeah, it was. They did. I said after Park Ferme changes is what it says. But let's see. It says change the suspension.
Oh,
To
okay.
find out what happened on Saturday, Ferrari decided to make changes to his suspension as well as replace his car with a new energy store, new control electronics, a new gearbox, case, and cassette.
Okay. Yeah, I figured it had to be something like that. But might as well. You're already starting at the back of the grid. Like just
Yeah,
do your
and
changes straight.
Sargent he didn't lose his place because Sargent, who qualified to win, also start from the pit because they made changes to his suspension and alterations to his brake cooling. So since they
Oh,
both were making changes, they kept their positions.
yeah. So the start was a little crazy. So they get going and poor Norris.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah, there's that, and then there was the whole controversy too about George advancing
George.
what 5 places it was because he
Yep.
went off into that lane and then came back on, and then there was back. In fact, a lot of the fan groups were like, "Oh, see, he did this, was it right?" But the stewards came back and said, "No, that was allowed. That
Which I
he actually got the advancement before he went off, or something like that."
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that is one hard part. The only other race I've been to, we sat at near the start line. And so that is hard to not see what's happening. I mean, again, we can watch the screen, but you miss a lot of the little intricacies, right? Like at first it almost looked like everybody got away okay. And then I was like, when they came around, I said, "Where's Norris? He's nowhere to be found." And then here he comes after, like he went into the pits and got his new stuff, but
Yep.
totally missed the whole thing with George. We did not see that on the screen, so it just looked like George had a great start and was jumped up quite a bit.
Yeah, and they said because there was a lot of controversy around, no one called it cheating, but it was like, was it allowed? Was he supposed to use that? Did he advance too far? Because he went off track
Well,
and
because
came back on.
you're not supposed to gain an advantage by going off the track. And that's,
Yeah,
I'm sure, what everybody is saying is
yeah,
like if he passed 5 cars and he was technically off the track, then he's gaining an advantage.
yeah. And the
Um,
stewards are saying that he had gotten past them before he went off, or it wasn't the going off the track did not gain any advantage, and so that's what the
yeah.
stewards
And
said.
we listened to all the radios afterwards and at least when they ended. And I believe it was Checo that said on his radio, um, something about George going off and gaining that advantage. That is what put him into P3. And I can't remember. I don't think Red Bull really responded on the
Well,
radio.
Christian Horner on Sky Sports said that he got away with a corner cut.
Yeah. So, and that came also, like I said, off of Checo's radio. Like as he's crossing the line and they're telling him where he's at, that is in his head. It's fresh in his head where he's like, Russell finished third because of what he did. he got that advantage over those 5 cars. So definitely a little controversy at the beginning, but poor Lando, like where did he end up? 17th or something?
Lando ended up at
No.
17th. Yeah.
He was.
From
Okay.
P3 to P17.
I mean, you have like, yay.
Because as soon as he
Our
pitted,
upgrade.
like it was in there forever too, and then he was lapped, and like it was just like,
It was so
yeah,
sad. Like I cheered for him every time he came around because he was pretty much by himself. And he just kept coming, and it's like this is the saddest thing
I
ever.
know. I was like, when and I even missed it too because I remember it happening, and I'm like, why is he 40 something seconds behind
Yeah.
P1? Like, how did that happen? How did he get lapped? Like, what happened that he was out
Oh
that
yeah.
far?
It
Yeah, it
was
was crazy.
it was crazy. And I would say the other thing that's interesting, I think I have a video from lap 9. So the first few laps the cars come through and they're somewhat close together. And by lap 9, like the spacing between Max's car coming through and then Carlos, it just kept getting longer and longer and longer. And I really wanted to take a video towards the end of Max, and I think I do have one, but not unfortunately, but the lapped cars are kind of in between, so you miss the difference between where Max is and where Lewis was. And so I'll try to see if I can post that video and somehow mark Lewis's car so you realize like that the space how much
Yeah.
how many seconds are in between the first car and the second car. It's really insane in person to see how many seconds goes by before the next car comes through. Max is just dominant.
I'll sit and watch, when I'm watching, and I see like when Fernando or whoever's at second behind him, and I'll watch in like the intervals, like, okay, they're second, they're 1.1, they're
Yeah.
1.2, now they're 1.8. Why? Like, why can't you catch them? Like, why is it?
Yes.
And I saw some people talking, the chat groups and whatnot. They're, they talk about different things, and I think it would be interesting to see because yes, he is a good driver. But Fernando is a phenomenal driver. Carlos is a phenomenal driver. Charles is a phenomenal driver. There's a lot of phenomenal drivers. Now, somebody suggested take the drivers and do like a round robin swap, right? In between
Oh
the
yeah.
cars.
Yeah.
What would you get if you put Max in a Williams?
Well, I
If
don't
Max
know.
drove the Williams, and for like if you swap them around and you put Max in a different car, in a car that's like subpar, and you put Fernando or one of these other drivers in one of those, how would it lay out? Because it is a combination of the driver and the car.
Yeah.
It's not all the car. It's not all the driver either. And
Yeah.
all these people, oh, Max is the best driver ever, and Lewis is the best driver. All these, yeah, some of them are phenomenal drivers,
Yes.
but it's also the car. That's the beauty of F1. F1 isn't just the driver. Like some of
Yeah.
the other all the other, the things in motorsport when all the cars are exactly the same. That's the thing. It's not just that because all these cars are not exactly the same.
No.
Even the same two cars on the same team are not
Not
exactly the
exactly.
same.
Not exactly.
So you
But
take
going
those two drivers and put them on a different team.
Yeah. You never know. It would be interesting. I mean, no teams are going to let another driver, but it would be cool if we could see that. But one of the things that I wasn't aware of, again, being at the race, is apparently Max had a lot of track limit violations.
A lot. In fact, toward the end, the last couple laps are telling him that he got the what is it, the orange and black flag or
For
whatever
the
it is. He got it,
Yeah.
and they told him if he went over again that he was going to get a 5-second penalty. And they're like, yeah, but it's no big deal. You're so far ahead. Don't worry about it.
Oh,
And
jeez.
he started. It's like, why? What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what do you mean? I'm not going out. Like he was almost like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then there was, I don't know, there was some other kind of, I don't know, either he said it or someone speculated that he said that he was just like checking something, or I don't know, pushing the limits or something.
Interesting.
But yeah, he got a track warnings. I don't know if he actually got the actual penalty or not because he went over at least 4 times.
Wow. That's really interesting because that I think that last year he was doing that quite a bit, and you see a lot of the oh, it's favoritism. Of course, Max isn't getting penalized for that like other drivers would. But I didn't see it obviously from where we were. I don't think the track violation or the track limit areas were near us, but that is interesting. It was really hard to watch Carlos go from P2 to, I think we're lucky he ended up in fifth. I feel like that could have been worse. But
Charles starting in the pits at P19.
yeah,
And then he made it up to P11, but
which was good, but
Yeah.
again, not knowing what was going on. So like, why was Carlos going into the pits it seemed kind of early. Clearly it was a 2-stop strategy for everybody.
but not everybody.
Who didn't go in?
Mercedes, I think, only did one, and I think Red Bull only did one.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Well,
double
we're
check
not going to
that.
win anything when we're stopping twice for tires or whatever. Checo had a phenomenal race.
No, Max finally did too. Yeah, Max did
Oh, he
too.
did. Okay. Yeah, Checo's charge up. I mean, he was just picking people off. You could see from our end, we did not have any overtaking in our area, but I know it was almost, you could see it was going to happen as soon as they rounded the corner where it was out of sight for us. Because when Lewis took over Carlos, coming around the high-speed turn where we were sitting, I looked at my boyfriend and I said, well, Lewis is going to overtake him around that next corner. And sure enough, then they show the video. And it was the same with Checo. You could just see him picking people off. So for him to go where he started to finishing fourth, right? He finished ahead of Carlos. Really, really good drive. Amazing, amazing drive. And same with Lewis. I feel like all weekend. Oh, also BT Dubs, Shakira was there. And
I saw that.
yeah, so that was kind of interesting. But even during some of the qualifying sessions, I was surprised that Lewis, his times were not higher because he seemed to be coming through faster than a lot of the other drivers. So he also had a great race. It was great to see him back up on the podium. Very, very exciting. I couldn't believe a double Mercedes podium though. Like,
I know that was insane. That was insane.
I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah, there was 3 that did 3 pit stops, but everybody else did 2. So
Who did 3?
That would be K-Mag, Lando, and Nico. So Haas ran both of their cars.
Okay.
2 and 3. Yeah, it's some of the drops though that I thought were just pretty. Some of them were pretty close. Like I don't know. Well, you had Gasley. His grid penalty. He ended up starting P10 because of that, but then he ended up finishing P10. Like a bunch that started and ended right where they had, but I think the ones that were like to me that were the most heartbreaking. You had was it Nico? He got P7 and then he finished P15.
Is that where he ended up finishing?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Here's the thing though about the Haas, and I meant to say this when we were talking about qualifying, is they really are they're great on a single lap. They've got that pace on a single lap, but for
that consistency.
Yeah, they just don't have that when it comes to the race.
Well, and then look at that. They pitted 3 times. I don't know why they pitted 3 times, but 3 times, that's not helping you. If you're pitting 3 times, that's not helping you at all.
Yeah, most definitely not.
Yeah, that's just crazy. And they had pitted 3 times by lap, and very similarly, Nico had pitted his third one on lap 43, and his K-Mag on lap 42.
Oh, wow.
So that's just really interesting if we think about that, because
Wonder what tires they were on.
I don't know. So they pitted about the same time on all of them. So Haas, Nico and Kevin, 10 and 8, then 24 and 26, 42 and 43. Those are the laps. So
Huh.
very similar strategy for both of them on their pits in 3 times. I'm like, that's not helping. That'd be
Yeah,
interesting
that
to see
is
the first.
that is really interesting, actually. Yeah, we were watching some of the who was on what tires, and but I don't know like what the degradation was. That's the hard part with being live. Unless you're getting the commentary, you don't always know what's happening. Why are they going into the pits? Is it tire degradation? Is there an issue with the car? You don't always know what the situation is.
Well, yeah,
Still would like to see
Joe.
it in person, but
Yeah, Joe at least moved up and got points from P13 to P9, so that was good for Alfa Romeo, right?
he was so excited too on his radio
Yeah,
message. Like that was so cute. But also
yeah,
because Yuki got a drop.
yeah.
And I'm going to
Poor
say,
Yuki.
I still do not see where he ran Joe off the track.
I don't
I
either.
I didn't see it when they showed the video. I've looked at it one other time. I need to probably spend a little bit more time looking at it. But Yuki felt the same way. He said, I didn't push him up. There was space. And to me, it looked like there was space. And he said, it's not my problem if he chooses to go off because doesn't he doesn't take that space or just decides to go off and have extra space. I felt so bad for Yuki. Like you could just hear
I
how
know.
upset he was when they told him about that. Like, and even afterwards, watching that interview, the post race interview,
I
you
know. I
could
felt
just
so bad for him.
horrible, and it's like he has been doing pretty well this season. He's been doing really well, and to go from points to now out of the points, and everybody moves up. Joe moves from 10th, to 9th, and I don't know who was in the. Oh, you said Gasley moved to 10th, so
Yeah, he finished 10th, and Charles just still didn't make it.
sucks. But Mercedes has to be second in the constructors now because they were neck and neck with
Yeah, yeah.
Aston
I'll go
Martin.
look that
So
up.
I
Yeah,
do remember at the end of the race saying like, "Oh my gosh, that is now getting really tight." Like
yeah,
those
yeah.
two.
Mercedes is now second, and Aston Martin is third. It's 152, 134. Ferrari's 100. Alpine is 40. Mercedes or McLaren rather is 17. And then Haas and Alfa Romeo tied at 8.
Hmm.
But driver standings, it goes Red Bull, Aston Martin, Mercedes, Mercedes, Ferrari, Ferrari, Aston Martin.
Okay. Okay. All right. I mean, I thought it was like I think you had said when we were chatting, like it was, a fairly straightforward race. We had no safety cars, we had no red flags, there was no
It was
nothing.
so interesting. Like the only thing I was like, because I can't believe I'm shocked that we talked this long. So for Aston Martin, both of their drivers ended up in the gravel pre-race. Both of the drivers did advance one up from their qualifying to how they finished, and they got points, which is great. Um, and then Alonso, of course, was once again watching the race and supporting it. At one point, they're like getting him to try to push past his Stroll, and he's like, "No, it's all right. He can."
You could tell they were so consistent coming through because I was like, pass him,
And he's
pass
like, and he
Stroll.
literally is on the radio going, "Nah, basically, just let Stroll finish the way Stroll's gonna finish." He's like, "Nah." He's like, "It's
Yeah.
all right."
And every time they kept coming around, and I'm like, we're running out of laps. And his spacing was so consistent to Stroll. Like you could tell he wasn't trying to push any further, harder. He wasn't
He was on the
falling
radio
back.
basically saying, let him have it."
Oh my gosh. And then the after the race where his engineer is telling him this is who finished and this is the order. and he threw signs in there, and Fernando's like, what? And the engineer's, oh, no, I'm sorry, it's Max, it's Lewis, and then Russell, and then whatever goes from there. And he goes, oh, that makes more sense, because that's not what they were showing on the screens. And I'm like, again, you're watching the screens as you go around.
He cracks me up. And of course, as Mercedes, upgrades are starting to show that pretty good.
Apparently,
P2 to P3. I mean, Hamilton goes from P4 to P2, but Russell P12 to P3. Like, this is, I mean, it's showing some good driving. I mean, granted, there's that one section that's all questionable about how he moved up those spaces, but aside from that, look at all the other things that kid is doing. He's showing some good driving.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also good strategy.
Right? And you
Right?
listen to him, they talk about him. They talk about how he is so in tune with the car. He's so in tune, and he's quite polite on the radio and really into it. He makes me think of a young Alonso. Like, he's very into the strategy and into the car and into everything that's going on around him. And he's very calm about it. It's very British about it.
Very British, very British. But I think good for them, and I'm excited to see. Well, for all of the teams, so they go to Canada next. And there's one other thing I want to talk about, like post race, just because it's kind of fun.
Well,
But
and then just one other quick thing, just to mark that Checo did go from P11 to P4, so that was pretty cool.
An amazing race to watch him. I'm sure on TV, but also in person. Just every time he was coming around, it's like, oh, he picked off another one. He picked off another one. Like, so great job,
Checo. Just to watch him. It's just quietly, just go. So
yeah,
that was pretty amazing.
Incredible.
It was hard for him, but just to show you how competitive those Mercedes cars are becoming, that he could not pick them off.
Yeah.
Regardless of whatever you want to say, what Russell did or did not do, he could not pick off Russell or Hamilton.
Yeah.
Because both of those cars, they've done something. They've done something showing some good improvement.
Like we've been talking, they knew after that after the first race or so, they needed to make changes, and they've been working hard on it. And so for them to come out and have such a strong race, like, I say good for them. Good for everybody back at the factories.
Right.
After the end of the race, just real quick before we talk 2 seconds about next week, we got the opportunity to go out onto the track, which was really fun.
Your picture there, sitting out on the grid.
So that's towards the back of the grid. Unfortunately, there were tons of people obviously out there walking. We couldn't even go close to like where the first row of pit boxes are, because people were still down there after the ceremony, the podium ceremony, and all of that stuff. And I would have loved to have tried to get a look into the pits, into the garages, but it was so packed. There was no way I was ever going to get down there. So I'm like, I'm good. I'm on the track. I picked up a little rock. I wish, honestly, I would have grabbed more, but I grabbed a rock. So I have a rock from Olympia, Greece, because I'm a big Olympics fan, and I've picked up, a little rock here and there, just tiny little rocks. And so I got one that has green, so painted for the edge, of the track. But we were able to go out there and do that, and then headed out. But so much fun. I'll start posting on our social media and sharing a little bit more about just the experience. We did explored the fan zone a little bit. It was very different from Austin in a lot of ways. It's not nearly as big of a track outside of, I guess, the track area, where fans walk and everything. In Austin, you've got circus rides. What do you got? Like Ferris wheel and all that kind of stuff. And there's just a little section. It's a very narrow when you're trying to leave. Like, I was at one point on Saturday thinking there are so many people trying to go in two directions in this very narrow area. I'm like, this is a recipe for disaster. If somebody decides to like freak out, this could be a serious issue. But a beautiful, beautiful track. And so I'll start posting more now that I
said there was 248,000 and some odd number of people in attendance.
Oh, okay. We were wondering, Sunday by far the busiest day. Like we went on Saturday and there was lots of empty seats around us, lots of empty seats across the whole track. Like we could see how few seats were actually filled, even for qualifying. Got a little bit busier between P3 and qualifying, but then Sunday it was like all the seats were taken except for the ones next to us, which was so sad. So sad. So I'll start posting more things. We did a lot of fun stuff, but we greatly missed you guys.
Next time
For sure. 100%.
I'll have to figure out what we're talking about next week, and then the next race is in Canada.
It's gonna be more on my time zone. Yay!
Time zone.
That's the one race though that we heard another couple talking. They were from England, and they were talking about how Montreal definitely should go to that race. Like everything is so well done. They bring your drinks and food to your seats, like the whole 9 yards. So
nice.
I think those might be available for next year already. We might need to look into that.
All right. I'll be able to travel for sure.
I hope by next June. But yeah, Canada next week, and we will figure out what to talk about on Beyond the Grid, or not Beyond the Grid, Grid Basics, or we'll do a team profile or something. We'll figure it out.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll wrap this one out and get it off to being published. Apologies, it was late today. We had some international travels, and so we're recording on Tuesday, which is odd, but we'll get this out. And thanks for coming along, and we'll see everyone next week.
Thank you. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and a review. To stay up to date with She Loves the Grid and get all the behind-the-scenes content, you can follow us on Instagram at She Loves the Grid and on Facebook at facebook.com/She Loves the Grid. Thank you for joining us for the ride this week.